Hi, everybody. My name is Cameron Harmon, and I'm here today just to give you a short little tutorial on clay. You know, there are really two kinds of clay. There are many varieties of these two types of clays, but in reality, there's only two of them. There's kaolinite and there's ball clay. The kaolin is a very nice white clay. In fact, it's so white it's used for the coating on slick paper that makes it white. Ball clay, on the other hand, is originally made in a different way. And it has two different things about it. One is it has a lot of organic materials in it because of the way it was originally formed. Also, it is a different crystalline structure. Usually something like montmorillonite, and often, though, has a lot of bentonite. Now, what this means is that the ball clay is much, much finer grained. Because the ball clay is so fine grained, that means it has a lot more surface area than the kaolin clay does. Now, the kaolin clay kind of looks like a stack of papers. It's what they call platelets, and they're a little bit bigger crystals. So really, the ball clay takes in a lot of more water than the kaolin does. Now, the water reacts with the clay crystals and is actually chemically attracted to it. But there's additional water when you mix it sometimes, and it goes clear into these interstitial spaces between the crystals. So because the ball clay is so very fine grained, it's got an awful lot of free space for water to go into. So it will take up a whole lot more water. Now, what this means to you is that with the more water and with the very fine grains, ball clay is a lot more plastic, and it lends itself better to forming certain ways. For example, ball clay helps a casting slip cast better. It helps a mix extrude better, and it helps a mix ram press better, as an example. Now, there are two downsides to the ball clay. One is color, because it will always fire much darker than that white kaolin will fire. The other is because it takes up so much water, it will shrink a great deal more when it's drying, which means it's more prone to drying cracks or warping. However, kaolin is so non-plastic by comparison that you have to do something to make it work. So a typical mix will have both a kaolin clay and a little bit of ball clay added in it as part of the mix. Now, if you want to keep the same product that you've been making that's a nice white product, and you feel like you should add more ball clay to make it work, but you don't want the color, there are certain things, organic materials, that you can add in very small percentages that will help make that mix move more plastically. It'll be a little better for you. And this sometimes works very, very well, particularly when you have the shrinkage already worked out, the size of your dies or the size of your molds are already fixed, and you can't stand to have any more shrinkage. Then you'd have to do something like adding the organic materials, such as ceramic flour. That's a brand name of a plastic material, or a material that forms plastic for you. Now, When you are using a mix that has more ball clay in it, you've got to watch the way it dries. You really have to keep it in a higher humidity situation a lot longer in order for the drying to take place a bit more slowly during that high shrinkage phase of drying. Now, just to clarify that a little bit, drying basically occurs in two stages with ceramics. The first stage is where you get all that water out that's in between the clay particles. And as I said, with ball clay, there can be an awful lot more of it than with kaolin. The second stage is when you're getting out the chemically attached water. That water comes off after the shrinkage has stopped. What that means to you is that when you're drying, you've got to be very careful during the first stage of drying while it's still moving. You can see what would happen if you have a piece that's got air blowing on it. The side that has the air blowing against it will probably dry a whole lot faster than the other side. And if it's uncontrolled, dries too fast, the piece is going to shrink more on the side seeing the extra air, and it'll warp that way, or might even crack. But if you keep that air moving with a bit more moisture in the air, a higher relative humidity, it will still dry, but it won't quite dry as fast, and it'll keep you from getting the warpage or the cracking. So you've got that problem. But there is also another problem. Because the ball clay has a whole lot of organic material in it, you have to get that organic material out without damaging your ware. That means that the organic material actually has to combine with oxygen. It has to combust, literally. On the other hand, you don't want it to catch fire because that causes it to expand, and that'll crack your ware. So generally speaking, what we do is we take it gentle and easy between 400 and 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually that's the place where most of that organic material gets burned out. Now, ceramic engineers have a variety of tests that they can use that will tell you exactly how much comes off where. But for most pottery, it's the same stuff all the time. So you can tell pretty quickly after you've started to fire pieces where your dangerous place is. However, don't forget, if it's a real thin piece, it's going to be pretty easy to do because the heat's going to go all the way through and there's going to be a whole lot less volume of material that has to be burned up. But if you've got real thick sections in your piece, they have to be treated carefully because it's going to take a while for the heat to penetrate, and it's going to take a while for the oxygen to penetrate, and it's going to take a while for the organic material to burn up. Now, this is just a quick rundown of some of the things to think about when you're making a mix or fiddling with a mix a little bit. There's a whole lot more. This is just here, a little bit of a help just to get you going. I hope you find it useful. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.